Hey everyone, this is Nick and welcome back to the Linux and open source news show. And in this episode, we've got Red Hat and System76 trying to fix multi-GPU support on Linux, which is awesome. We've got Valve pushing hard for Linux gaming with 3 new devices announced, one VR headset, one PC/console, and one controller. We also have Google walking back some of the policies that people really did not like about Android app sideloading and how they support their phone or release the drivers and device trees for their phones, and a bunch of other stuff, including this segue to our sponsor. So this video is sponsored by Proton Mail. You all heard about Proton Mail. They're your all end-to-end and zero-access encrypted email solution. You can have your own account for free, but of course they have paid plans to add multiple new security features and privacy-related features to make sure that you have the best experience, including more storage space, because of course when you create a Proton account, you also get access to a calendar, to contacts, to a VPN, a password manager, some storage space, and all the like. They're currently running a Black Friday deal which will give you up to 50% off your 12-month plan for Proton Mail, so do check them out using the link down in the description. It's the email service I use for all my personal email, for some storage, for my contacts, for my calendars, and I couldn't be happier about it. So yeah, do check them out, they're really good. Okay, so let's start with multi-GPU support. System76 and Red Hat are both looking at fixing multi-GPU on Linux. At XDC 2025, which is a developer conference, engineers from both companies gave a talk on the issues that remain with multi-GPU and what is needed to fix them. And as always, it's the same thing that is needed, which is a Wayland protocol, or at least existing protocols need to be extended a bit, and they also need to work on a new GPU daemon for Linux that handles things in the background, meaning this also requires work from desktop environments to adapt to it. Now, personally, I can't say my own multi-GPU experience has been all that bad, but there are still some issues, like for example, not being able to just plug in my monitor through a single USB-C cable. My monitor would act as a USB hub, as a Ethernet hub, as whatever else you want. That just does not work with my laptop on Linux because the USB-C or Thunderbolt port is hardwired to the Intel GPU, meaning everything rendered on the NVIDIA GPU is not passed through correctly and is capped at 30 FPS, which blows. So that's still an issue. Hopefully that's one that they can fix. And judging from posts on forums, it feels like people have plenty of other problems with multi-GPU configurations on Linux, so we really do need to fix them. What they're working on thus is a service that handles GPU preferences, configurations, and also works with containers as well, which generally just automates and simplifies things in the background, so you probably never really have to do anything to use hybrid graphics. It also would help with proper multi-monitor handling, hardwire ports, handling stuff without any frame rate issues, and also applications relying on the proper GPU that they actually want to use, discrete or integrated. It is early days, they do need to add stuff to Mesa, desktop environments will need to support it as well, and there's a Wayland protocol that needs to be finalized, which has been in discussion for 2 years by now, because apparently Wayland protocols take longer to decide on than anything any government ever did, so it is all far from done yet. Still, it is laudable work here. Hopefully the red tape around all of that goes a bit quicker than usual, because this is really a crucial part of the Linux desktop. This is something a lot of people have issues with, so it really does need to be fixed. Now, of course, you couldn't have missed it, so you're probably going to skip to the next news section, but Valve announced more SteamOS hardware from themselves this time. It's not like a partnership with another company. There's a new console, which some people say, hey, it's a pure PC. Yes, but it is a gaming console. It is small, it goes under your TV, it plays games, and it defaults to a gaming interface. That's a console. They also announced a controller and a new VR rig as well. So that VR headset is called the Steam Frame. It's a standalone PC running a Snapdragon CPU with 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. It runs SteamOS. It can play VR games or non-VR games. In this case, it will just display them in front of you like a regular screen, and it can plug in wirelessly to any PC that runs Steam or SteamOS if you want, and stream the games from that PC to the headset. They also have new controllers which have capacitive fingers detection that detect movements of your hands automatically through the cameras in the headset, have all the buttons and the sticks that you need. It's great. It's also the return of the Steam Machine. They did decide to use that terrible name that reeks of failure for that console/PC. Hopefully this one does better than the previous iteration of Steam Machines. It is a small cube, 6 inches for each side. It has tons of I/O, DisplayPort, HDMI, USB-C, USB-A, Ethernet, a micro SD card slot. It runs on a custom AMD CPU and GPU combo. Apparently it is 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck. It can do 4K 60 but over FSR, so probably on par with a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. It has 16 gigs of RAM plus 8 gigs of dedicated VRAM, and it will have a 512 gigs option or a 2 terabyte option for the storage as well. And finally, they also showcase their new Steam controller, which I find extremely ugly with those 2 little touchpads, square things at the bottom, but it does look pretty ergonomic. It has all the exact same buttons as the Steam Deck, so you can duplicate your configurations from the deck to the controller. It works with any PC, Linux, macOS, Windows, SteamOS, whatever you call it. If it runs Steam, it can work with it. They already apparently upstreamed the driver for it to the Linux kernel. It looks like a very decent one, but of course we'll need to have it in hand to know if it works well or not. All of this should come in early 2026. It is fantastic. This is going to push Linux gaming further. From what I heard, the Steam Machine is not going to be subsidized like the Steam Deck has been, so potentially it could be a bit more expensive than what people might expect, but those are still fantastic devices that hopefully push Linux gaming forward, hopefully help fix the anti-cheat issues. We'll see where it goes, but I am very excited for the future of that entire ecosystem and Linux gaming as well. Now, Google seems to be walking back some of their policies a little bit, notably on Android app sideloading. Now, they said that they will, in the end, let users install unverified applications on Android smartphones, after saying that only apps that were registered through their specific portal could be installed. This means that developers will not have to register there, they won't have to give their ID, they won't have to conform to the various potential restrictions that Google will very likely place on what apps can do or not if they are registered on this portal. Instead, developers will be able to keep shipping their applications as APKs, either standalone or as part of F-Droid or other stores. This, though, will not be a feature most people will access. It will likely be very hidden. Google says that this is a feature for experienced users. It will have clear warnings so people understand that this is a very dangerous practice. They didn't say what this will look like, they didn't share any screenshots, but I would assume it will be much as it is now. It will be a setting that you probably have to dig super deep to find in the settings of Android, and then you have to go through multiple prompts anytime you install something. Hopefully they don't make this too convoluted or just super boring to use, because installing an application, if you have to hit an OK button or 20 switches in the settings every time you want to install something, that is still going to be a huge deterrent for using F-Droid or sideloaded APKs. Hopefully it's a one-time enable it and then press OK every time you install, like it is now on Android, but since they're saying it's a new workflow, I'm expecting the worst. And Google also posted the device trees for the Pixel 10, Pixel 10 Pro, and Pixel 10 Pro XL, letting them boot the mainline Linux kernel now. Now, these are recent devices, they're dating back to August, if I remember correctly. They have the latest Tensor chips made by Google, or at least imagined and designed by Google. And while Google doesn't automatically provide code or trees with the versions of Android that they publish on their repos, they did ship this preliminary work in advance, which is good. Now, it will not result in a fully working smartphone yet, because the device tree doesn't imply the kernel has the necessary drivers to handle that hardware, And apparently booting the mainline Linux kernel on these phones requires a specific bootloader that has not been released yet. So for now, even if you had that bootloader, you could still only boot a basic command prompt from an init RAM file system, which is virtually useless for anyone not doing testing or driver development. Now, it still shows that Google might have interest in letting people hack away on those phones, or at least try and contribute and run mainline Linux on those phones, which at that point, maybe you're gonna be able to run Plasma Mobile, Phosh, and Linux apps on those devices instead of Android, and that would be pretty cool. Now, after Python rejected the $1.5 million grant 2 weeks ago, it seems like they received a huge surge in donations from people who agreed with their decision. They've raised over $157,000 at the time I wrote this script, with 295 new members coming in with a $99 per year membership. That is only 10% of the amount of the grants that they declined, so it is not like they made their money back, but this money was at least obtained from their user and developer base without any strings attached, so I still think it's a big win. Of course, the work that would have been funded by the grant is still super important. It was all focused on security, and it would have trickled down to a lot of other open package registries, so it wouldn't have helped only Python. And that is why Python is still looking for sponsorships, and apparently they have received some suggestions after they announced their intent not to take that money, which they are now looking at the suggestions. I am sure there are tons of funds in the EU that would be very happy to contribute to Python's success. At least in France, some schools teach Python to high school students. One of my friends, who's a teacher in high school, she had to learn a little bit of Python herself to teach the basics to their students. So it is something that could be done. I'm sure plenty of organizations would be very happy to keep the Python Foundation afloat without attaching weird ideological requirements to that. It is a difficult balance to keep when you're an organization like that, or even an individual, taking in as much money as you can to make the best work you can, no matter the source, or limiting yourselves to ethical sources of money that don't try to change your mission statement or who you are, but in the end, you just have less money to do less work. We also have some news on the Rust replacements for the GNU utilities. First, those core utilities are making progress. Apparently, they are now 85% compatible with the previous GNU tools. These Rust tools are already present in Ubuntu 25.10. They've been working almost smoothly with a few issues in terms of performance, and also they broke unattended updates that has been fixed quickly, as far as I can tell, but they still broke it. This new release now passes 544 tests out of 600, up from 532 tests being passed, these tests being there to see if these Rust core utilities provide the same results as the GNU tools. Performance optimizations are also baked in there, and BSD compatibility was also improved as well. One might think that this compatibility should maybe have been much closer to 100% before integrating these tools in an actual major distro like Ubuntu, but also out of those 15% of tests that are still not being passed, meaning those 15% differences with the GNU tools, maybe those are for functions and tools that are used extremely infrequently, so it's not a big issue. Maybe it's testing as intended, like you use a non-LTS release to push those things, you grab all the issues and the remarks from people who are willing to not use an LTS distro, and then you apply the fixes and you ship that in the LTS with a better compatibility. Now, the work on GNOME's digital well-being suite continues, with screen time limits being introduced in the Parental Controls app. This app now has a screen time page where parents can view how much time their kids spend on a screen, and they can set time limits as well, complete with a nice little bar chart to see how much time their kids spent on their computer. If such limits are set, then the well-being panel in the settings will not let the kid user account change those limits. Obviously, there will be an explanation on why this panel is now inactive. Of course, when the time limit is reached, the kid's session will lock itself instead of turning gray like when you use the existing time limit settings of GNOME. Right now though, child user accounts can still unlock that session, but of course that won't be the case in a future update to make sure that those limits are actually efficient. There's also a summary of the screen time of each child user in the Parental Controls app, with 2 categories of actions you can take, one being setting screen time limits, the other being accessing the various restrictions that you can put in place for the child user account. It's good to see some progress on that front on Linux. I don't know much about parental controls because I don't have kids. My kid is a fluffy, hairy cat and he doesn't use computers whatsoever, fortunately for me, so I never use those tools. But from what I heard, they're not that fantastic on Linux right now, so seeing work on that front, specifically from GNOME, but could probably apply to other desktops, that's really nice. Now, apparently internal documents leaked from Meta, and they revealed that they basically funded their VR and AI craze using money taken from scam ads, but that was knowingly and willingly. Reuters documented all of this. Meta was apparently extremely reluctant to remove and delete certain high-paying accounts, even though some of them were considered the scammiest of scammers, apparently. Certain accounts got 500 strikes without being shut down because they generated too much ad money. Instead, Meta penalized them by charging them higher ad rates. So basically they said, oh, you're a filthy scammer and you got striked, so you're gonna just pay us more to keep scamming users. That's nice. Meta even acknowledged in the internal documents, allegedly, that their internal systems helped push scam ads to users and got them to click on those ads. They admitted that users encounter 15 billion high-risk scam ads per day on their platforms, on top of the 22 billion organic scam attempts through posts from scam accounts that are unpaid, that aren't ads. $16 billion, or 10% of their revenue, is apparently estimated by Meta to come from scam ads. These same internal documents estimate that Meta is responsible for a third of successful scam ads, so ads that had a user click on them. Now, how did that all happen? Well, it's simple. Meta fired everyone working on the team handling advertiser concerns on brand rights issues. So people impersonating other brands were just free to keep doing so. And then they funneled all the resources from that scam money to VR and AI instead. They just gave up on policing the platforms. Fake concert tickets, crypto scams, 80% of promotions from brands that never had sales. All of that was not flagged at all by their system as a problematic ad, which made billions of dollars for Meta. Now, we can all debate on whether it is these platforms' responsibility to police these ads and these scams, or if it is up to governments to use the platforms to detect those, or if it's up to users to report them. But in the end, if you make billions of dollars knowingly from scam ads, you're a scummy scumbag company. I'm sorry, there's no other way to describe it. It is abysmal. Now, of course, it's shocked Pikachu face for Meta being evil, but yeah, that's just unacceptable, and hopefully they get slapped for this with a nice little fine or something, because this is just unacceptable nowadays. Now, Wikipedia is asking AI developers to be responsible and to use their paid API instead of just mass scraping the public articles, which is a practice that apparently taxes their servers quite a lot. Wikipedia noted that recently AI bots started scraping the contents of Wikipedia while trying to look like humans. And actual human visits are actually declining 8% year over year, since I guess a lot of people started looking at an AI summary of the Wikipedia page instead. Wikipedia thus said that generative AI developers should use the paid API and provide attribution to give credit to the contributors. As they say, for people to trust information, they need to know what the sources are. And also, I know a lot of people don't trust Wikipedia, they think it is biased or whatever, which it can be in certain articles, and so you probably also want to know that the information is from Wikipedia if you think it is a biased source, so you can potentially discard that information. So they're right on both fronts here. They are also warning that fewer visits to Wikipedia means fewer contributions, fewer donations, which we all know will potentially lead to the end of that AI goldmine, because at some point they just will not have new content to train on and reference, because they will have become the front end to all of that documentation and writing, and the actual websites writing the articles and creating the work will just not exist anymore, or they will be so few and far between that the AI will just never learn anything new and be completely left behind. Now, unfortunately, Wikipedia is not trying to implement any sanctions or remedies to prevent that mass scraping of the website. They're just asking nicely, which does not work with AI developers. They don't care about how nice you are, they just want your content for free. Which, yeah, they're gonna get it anyway, just a cat and mouse game, and once they've scraped the content, they don't really have to go scrape it again that often, because a lot of articles just never change. A court in Germany ruled that OpenAI's training on and reproducing song lyrics was copyright infringement. Now, it is a regional court in Munich, and the case was brought by GEMA, which is the organization handling music rights, presumably like the SACEM that we have in France. The court found that memorizing these lyrics and reproducing them in chatbot outputs was infringement of copyright exploitation rights, meaning it is copyright infringement. This can be appealed, and likely will be, by OpenAI. They're also trying to argue that this decision is for a limited set of lyrics, the lyrics for the songs of the people who brought this lawsuit, which is ridiculous, because you will not rule that song by song. If training on a song's lyrics is copyright infringement, it is copyright infringement for every song lyrics. There's no difference in how those are handled. OpenAI also tried to throw their users under the bus, saying that the chatbot output was at the request of a user of ChatGPT, so the user should be liable for that reproduction of lyrics, which is insane. That would be like arguing that the user is responsible for an illegal download being hosted on a website and appearing in a search result because they searched for something that cropped up with that result. That is madness. Obviously, this is in Germany, this is a regional court, and this decision can be appealed, so it doesn't automatically destroys all AI in the world in the process. But as always, the defense from these companies is insanely laughable, like arguing the users are responsible for the fact that you decided to scrape lyrics, train your AI on, and then just republish and reprint those lyrics. It's not the user's fault. You did it, you grabbed them without authorization, and your AI has the capability of reproducing it. You never put any barrier in place to prevent that from happening. So no, it's not the user's fault. And arguing that song lyrics should be handled differently because some authors haven't sued you yet, I don't think that works either. So hopefully this puts a stop to this, at least in Germany, but I'm not super hopeful. What I do hope, though, is that you'll check out our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. You all know about them by now. They make laptops and desktops that ship with Linux pre-installed. You can slap any old distro you want on them. They even have repos for popular packaging formats and distros to add the various support for the light bars, the color keyboard backlight and stuff like that, but you can just use any distro on their hardware. That's what I do, for example, on the Tuxedo Cube, which is a desktop PC that I bought from them. I run Nobara on it, and I just use it for gaming. My laptop, the one that I use to make this show and everything else on my channel, is an Infinity Book Pro 16 from them as well, running their distro Tuxedo, as they have choices for everyone, every price point, every need. So click the link down in the description and check them out. They're really, really good if you want to have a fully Linux supported desktop or laptop and just not really worry about compatibility anymore. Anyway, this will conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it, watching it, whatever. Please do click on all those YouTube buttons, because, yeah, since we received that content warning, the channel has probably been completely ditched from all recommendations. The views are insanely low compared to usual, so don't hesitate to click on all those buttons. It should maybe make a difference. Thank you all for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!